Hello everybody, I am Cassidy. I am the Hippie Catholic. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe to be part of the conversation. So I am back to my Mr. Rogers setup because I'm getting personal today, and I just haven't had this setup for a long time. I've been wanting to talk about this experience I've had for a long time, but I kind of got the drive to finally make this video after Lizzie's Answers did a response video to God is Grey about the whole birth control issue. I really love the conversation God is Grey and Lizzie had about birth control and just about these scandals in the Catholic Church. I'll put the links to their videos down below. I also thought that Lizzie's latest video about natural family planning was actually pretty interesting, so like if you're interested in that, I'll put that in the description box below too, so you can check that out. Birth control is a big area of contention among Catholics. Many Catholics do not agree with the church on this issue. Something that really irritates me is that some Catholics go around the world believing that in order to be a good Catholic, you have to conform to ideals that don't sit well with your conscience. And actually that in itself goes against church teaching, but that's worthy of a whole other video. If you feel like that an area of church teaching is unjust, there's a reason for that injustice. And that does not mean that you should be dissenting about everything just because you don't like it. And I think before dissenting, a good Catholic should really dive into the church's philosophy and also just science and scripture and other church traditions and just do your homework before you dissent. But I've done my homework and I dissent on this issue of birth control. And diving into the social and theological reasons for my dissent regarding this teaching is worthy of a whole other video. This video is just going to be dedicated more to my own personal testimony and experience as a Catholic woman using birth control. I will say, I guess disclaimer, to my Catholic viewers watching, and fun fact for those of you who don't know, birth control actually is allowed for Catholics if it's used for a medical reason. Here's my story. So I guess I'm gonna get personal with you guys today. I'm 21, I'm a virgin, and I have an assortment of anxiety disorders. It's you get a box of chocolates, but instead of chocolates, it's anxiety. I have generalized anxiety, OCD, and PTSD. In addition to this, I have a condition known as premenstrual dysmorphic disorder, or PMDD. It's basically severe PMS. It's PMS on hard mode. Also, something to know is that PMDD centers a lot around the mental symptoms associated with PMS. For me, it would literally get so bad that every month I would get suicidal, before my period or on my period. It was so bad, my depressions would just be horrendous and nothing helped. I was in therapy for OCD and anxiety and stuff, and even that, it just wasn't working. I also was, around that time, I was processing trauma having to do with my second sexual assault. Not every form of sexual assault is the R word, okay? There's other forms of sexual assault, okay? Great, I'm glad that we can be on the same page with that. And I totally support people who have experienced any form of sexual violence whatsoever. So I love you guys so much. Around the time I decided to use birth control, I was really suppressing a lot of my feelings surrounding my sexual assault. And it was hard for me to call it what it was for a long time. And I was kind of around a toxic group of people that everybody kind of had a competition with each other about who had the worst life. Eventually, I just had a full-on mental breakdown, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Around that time, I went to the doctor and I was prescribed low estrogen hormonal birth control for my PMDD, and I was prescribed sertraline for my OCD, because that was what was acting up. Because OCD is my dominant disorder. For some people, it's PTSD. For me, it was my PTSD was at play, but it was more subdued compared to my OCD, but they were all connected. And it was because of my PTSD symptoms, my OCD was getting worse. I was on birth control for over a year, and everything started out all right. My anxiety felt like it was gone. My periods weren't bad. My mental health felt amazing. I was so relieved. It was a lifesaver. In all honesty, that birth control and the sertraline that I was on saved my life at that time. I don't know what I would have done if I did not have my medications at that time. I started gaining weight very quickly despite not changing my lifestyle. I actually was eating less than I was like before I was using the medication. But you know, I just kind of coped with the weight gain because I was like, you know what? I'm unbothered, I'm moisturized, focused, and flourishing. I have struggled with body issues my whole life, but I just kind of was like, well, something has to give, and like I can't live in my brain right now, so like I need this medication. And then it got worse. I started hallucinating on my Zoloft. I saw lights that weren't there. I just saw like shadowy blobs that like I knew weren't there. And it was like very common, like I would see these blobs and these lights like all the time. But the funniest hallucination I had when I was on the sertraline was I had an auditory hallucination of like the Dell like opening like noise or sound or whatever from like old like early 2000s Dell computers. I just remember being in my bathroom and I just hear, I remember I go over to my roommate's room and her boyfriend was in there and he was like a big like computer guy, and I was like, hey, did you just like play that like noise that's like dun na 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 na? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, your girl's tripping. Then I went to the doctor and I got off that medication. What's funny too is that someone I told about my sertraline experience said that they had a similar auditory hallucination when they were on Zoloft and hormonal birth control, and it was another 90s computer sound. I don't know what it is with Zoloft and 90s computer noises, but like, I don't know, it loves 90s computer noises for some reason. Some of my like side effects got better, like when I stopped using the Zoloft, but my birth control had its own set of side effects. Like my eyes were really dry and my vision was affected because my eyes were so dry. That was unusual for me. I also got like horrific heartburn. My acid reflux would burn my throat every morning. Like I had a sore throat every morning. That was like how bad my acid reflux was from the birth control. I was hardly eating and just gaining a lot of weight. Like my body issues got so bad, like I couldn't even look at myself like in the mirror. It never got into eating disorder territory, but it still was not good. Then I started to throw up like every morning, and that was when I talked to my doctor and I got off the hormonal birth control. That's the end of the story time. Now it's time for my hot takes. Despite misconceptions, birth control is allowed in the Catholic Church if it's used for a medical reason. In this case, I was using it to treat my PMDD, but it's not permitted to be used to prevent the conception of children, which I just find that to be counterintuitive. Even looking at it from the marriages only for babies perspective, people can and do conceive using hormonal birth control. My freshman year roommate would joke around and said that she was the squirmy that got through both a condom and birth control. So, I mean, it does happen. When we're saying that birth control is a sin, we really have to look at what kind of message this sends to people who literally can't conceive. And I'm not talking about, oh, they're just open to life or anything. Like, they literally can't conceive. Like, they're survivors of reproductive cancer, like can't conceive. What does that say to them? Like, I don't care what kind of way it's spun to be like, oh, we're not including them. Like, that messaging is harmful. It's telling those people that they're lacking in some way. It's subliminally telling them that their marriages are invalid in that aspect. It just makes me really mad, and it's just one of the problematic reasons why I cannot support the Catholic Church's decision to like be against birth control. Also, birth control prevents abortions, but that's a whole other thing. I am pro birth control. You can indeed dissent from church teaching if it is really against your conscience and is against your moral judgment, and still be a good Catholic. There's some things that you can't dissent on and still be Catholic, but there are things that you can, and especially things having to do with like social justice issues. Honestly, I believe that dissent is healthy for the church because we have to have a variety of opinion to get close to achieving justice for everybody. I am not pro-abortion, but you'll also find that most pro-choice people aren't pro-abortion either, but that's worthy of a whole other video. I wanted to share my story with you because I wanted to give an honest testimony of my experience as a woman and as a Catholic. I feel like a lot of times women in the church get this stigma placed on them just for being women. I had men tell me that I like need to close my legs, and I'm like, it's just funny to me. You're not better or worse than somebody just because of your like sexual status. It just really makes me angry that women are judged and categorized by like, hey, what's your like sexual status? Like, are you a virgin? Like, are you like an adulterer? Are you like, you know, going to hell? It just makes me really angry, and it's just really misogynist, and I'm not here for it. Women in general should not be talked to like this. There's a big Madonna harlot dichotomy when it comes to views on women, like within the church and just within the society. There's a lot of pressure that like you have to like behave a certain way, you have to be like a certain kind of woman, and it's also just not reflected in the Catholic women saints that we have in our church either. Our saints are very diverse and offer different gifts to the church. Just living with organs that can carry a baby is such a taxing experience in and of itself. Our bodies go through dramatic cycles every single month in order to perpetuate the human species. That in itself is a sacrifice that people with uteruses have to bear. We deserve to be respected and revered. We are not Amazon delivery trucks who deliver men their packages, aka babies. We are human beings and we are equal. Because of that, we deserve compassion, respect, and sensitivity when it comes to regulating our bodies and taking care of our health. I hope that my experience can let any of you Catholic girls watching this know that you are not alone, and your experience, whatever it may be, with hormonal birth control is valid. I'm looking into NFP more critically at the moment because my doctor said that hormonal birth control isn't really a good option for me because of my reactions to it. While I know that like NFP is approved by the church, and I like completely affirm NFP because I've heard that it works for a lot of women, my issue is I don't think that the church should only be approving of NFP, if that makes sense. And I thought that Lizzie's Answers recent video about NFP was really thought-provoking. I think it's a good video to check out, so I'll put that in the description box below too. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider supporting me on my Patreon account. As a small creator, I'm currently not monetized, so any donation would help the platform out immensely. Thank you so much to my lovely patrons, Julia, Derek, Debbie, and Peter. You guys are amazing. If you're not financially able to donate, that's totally okay. You can still help the channel by liking, sharing my videos, and just by leaving your thoughts in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. I am Cassidy. I am the Hippie Catholic. God bless.